Hey, look, somebody asked me a question. I better answer it.
Hey, it's Aaron, and today I've got a question to answer from Doug. Doug wants to know, when do I think we'll see a mass-produced electric car with a 500 or more mile range? Um, it's a pretty good question because electric cars are on everybody's mind, and if you listen to the hype, we're going to have them anytime now. Every car is going to be electric. Um, the reality is it's going to take a while. It will be decades before we have a majority of the cars in this country as electric, and that's a product of a lot of things, and it would be a whole different video. I've actually already done a video on that. I will link to that down in the description if you want to know why we're not going to have every car be electric inside the next 10 years. But to Doug's question, when will we see a mass-produced electric car with 500 plus mile range? My answer is that in the mainstream, we probably won't see that. If we do, it will be a short-lived thing or a rare, like a expensive upgrade option or something like that. And the reason for that is simple. It's not because it's not possible, and it's not because it's too expensive. It's purely because it's really pointless. We could see that in large vehicles. So in trucks, especially heavy-duty applications, for sure there would be a place for that. But in normal cars and crossovers, SUVs, the stuff that we drive every day, it's just kind of pointless. Most vehicles right now that are a gas or diesel platform, they have a range of around 300 miles. Somewhere in the 250 to 300 range is the average. That's kind of the norm. That's what we expect. We expect to be able to get in the vehicle, drive a couple hundred miles, and then stop, fill it with fuel, drive a couple hundred more miles, etc. And with electric cars, there's really no reason to be beating that. There's really no reason to have more than that as your mileage. The more battery you have, the longer it's going to take to charge it. Doesn't matter what the technology is. And that would be counterproductive towards, and never mind the weight, that's all counterproductive towards the reason to have that range. Really what we need is commonplace charging for cars that are close to on par with gasoline car fill-up. So what we need is the ability to charge the car pretty close to full or to full inside of that 5 or 10 minutes that it takes to pull up to the gas pump, put your credit card in, and then stick the spigot in and fill the tank. Most of us can do that in about 10 minutes or less. A lot of us can do it in 5. So we need electric cars to be able to fill up that fast. We don't need the electric car to have more range. Just to reiterate, with an electric car with a 500 plus mile range, you've got two big negatives. The fill-up time is going to be much, much longer. It's going to take the bigger the battery, the longer it takes to charge it. It doesn't. That's just a reality. There's no way around that. Second is diminishing returns. The larger the battery, the heavier the battery. The heavier the battery, the shorter the range of each battery cell. Right. So if you have a battery that is of X size, let's say it's a regular car battery size like this, and that gives you, say, 4 miles of electric range. If you double that battery in size, and by doing so double its weight, you might now, instead of getting 8 miles of range, you're probably going to get more like 6.5 or 7. And then as you get bigger, it just keeps going downward. So that's a diminishing return. It's the same with a gas or diesel car and a gas tank. It's a reason that when I was a truck driver, I didn't always fill my side tanks all the way up. That's a lot of weight. If I knew that I was only going to need about 700 miles of fuel, I would just fill one side, or I would fill both sides to about half, and that would save me fuel in the long run because then I'm not carrying a couple hundred extra pounds of fuel. So those sorts of things also applies to a battery. If the battery is bigger and bigger and bigger, it's heavier and heavier and heavier. The heavier it is, the harder it is to move the car. That's just how physics work. So I don't see a 500 plus mile range being a norm in mass-produced vehicles ever. It's just kind of pointless. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to be able to fill faster than it does to be able to go further. In transportation in general, but especially in personal transportation. Now, once you get into big, heavy vehicles, it's the opposite. Further you can go, the better, because the less stops, the more efficient the overall trip is. But that's completely different from what we do as everyday drivers in our cars. Most of us are only driving about 30, 40 miles a day anyway. So, yeah, hopefully this answers your question, Doug, and I didn't go too long. And hopefully it's helpful for people out there to understand why the size of battery in an electric car is far less important than is the ability to charge it and how convenient that is. So there we go. That's what I got. If you have a question, you can go ahead and hit me up. You can find me down on the comments down below this. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Just make sure to DM or IM me so that I get your message, or tag me. Otherwise, I may never see it. Also, you can find me all over the place, right? So, yeah, hit me up if you got a question. Happy to answer it. This has been Aaron. Talk to you again soon.